Hello everybody, we are back and our book cover is painted. It's nice and dry. I've got 3 coats of the blue paint. There was 1 coat of that greenish paint underneath as well, but I covered that up with 3 more coats of paint, so it's pretty homogeneous. It's nice and dry. Let it dry overnight. The boards look pretty flat. There's a little bubbling there, but it's not a real thick board, so it's going to bend a little bit. So we have that part and we have that part, and you know, if you like the look of this, you could be done, right? This could be it, and you can move on to the next step. I, on the other hand, am not done. I am going to weather this a little bit more, so I'm not quite done with the paint, because I want this to look, right, like I went through all this trouble of putting these ridges on and building up this spine so it looks like a curved spine. I want it to look like an old book, and this was the oldest book I had to hand. It's not really that old. It's from 1902, but it's fairly worn. It's one of my favorite novels. You can get this on Audible, so I like it. It's a gothic romance novel, so it's fluff. It's not Shakespeare or anything, but it's a fun story. But anyway, it's an older book and it's been worn, and I'm using this as an example to show you the kind of wear marks that I'm going to try to mimic. And you want to look at where a book wears. So it wears along this ridge, and notice how that's lighter, considerably lighter. Color has kind of bleached out a little bit or worn away a little bit on those edges, on these edges, from being on a bookshelf, right? Being pulled off and on the bookshelf. The top has more wear. Look at how that's falling apart, because often we grab books like this off of bookshelves, right? The bottom has less wear. It's not as broken apart. There's wear on the corners, of course. I've thought about putting book corners on this or repairing it, but I don't know, there's something charming about an old book as well. But you can find older books like this in thrift stores and library sales. So, you know, don't be afraid to have 1 or 2 in your collection for, you know, this kind of reference. So you can kind of see the wear marks. Look at how dirty it is here, right? From people grabbing it and handling it, right? Think about how you hold a book, right, when you're reading it. Look how worn this book is. It just flies right open, lays nice and flat. It's this kind of open spine, right, that we're kind of mimicking with the binding that we're doing, by the way. So I want you to remember that properly bound hardcover books do that. They'll have an open spine, and we are mimicking that look with this binding. All right, so how do we mimic this look? Well, I'm not going to tear up my spine, because this actually has weakened this spine, but I can put some material, some fabric and some things in here to kind of give it a kind of roughly look. Sometimes I'll put lace back here just to kind of allude to a kind of worn book. We don't have headbands on this book, so it wasn't a terribly fancy book or a fancily bound book. All right, here's a more recent book. This is from 1927 and has this decorative band up at the top. That's called a headband. It's on the top and on the bottom, and it kind of finishes off the text block, protects the edges of the pages, helps support the book when it's sitting upright, that sort of thing. And you can see my old lavender and old lace does not have a headband at all. You can make headbands. Traditionally they would be hand tied onto really fancy leather bound books. You can make your own. You can buy them places like Hollander's or probably even Amazon. We're gonna mimic that look too by using upholstery trim. Oh, notice how you can see these different ridges in these pages. Each grouping of pages, that's a signature. This is a hand, or not hand, but this is a sewn book, and you can see the different signatures, the separation of the different signatures. It's a cool book. I bought this, it's a nature library. I bought this for the pictures. I thought I would take them out of this book and use them in my books, but Like, this book's almost 100 years old, and it is in fantastic shape. Look at how beautiful that paper still is. I just don't have the heart to take apart a book that's not falling apart. And look at those gorgeous plates. Gorgeous paintings, right? Probably originally watercolors. So this would have been a really expensive book 100 years ago to have these beautiful full color pictures in them. Lovely illustrations. So maybe someday I'll scan in the illustrations and use those. I don't know. Maybe someday, but I don't have it in me to take this lovely book apart. Okay, so that wear pattern. Isn't that funny? This book is only 20 years older than this one, right? This is 1927, I guess 25. This is 1902, right? Like, but look at how much better condition. So this is, or better condition this one's in, but this was a reference book. So you would only pull this out every once in a while, where this one, Lavender Old Lace, that's a novel, right? So it would be handled a lot more. And so that's something to think about, right? When I said, like, if you like it like this, you could leave it like that, because certainly old books do, older, again, 100 years isn't really that old for a book, but an older book, right, isn't, you know, there are some that survive in pretty good condition, like the book cloth's in good shape. There's a little ding to this one corner. That's really it. Other than that, it's in pretty good shape. And that's probably from it dropping. It probably got dropped once. So again, I'm going to be painting this so that it'll look a little more worn like this is. And I've got my other one over here that I worked on before. And you can see that's what I've done with this one, right? So I've added paint to the edges, to the corners, just to kind of make it look worn and handled. And it also helps these shapes really pop. It really adds a lot of dimension. So you can see here, like maybe this didn't glue down as well, but I added that paint in and it makes that shape pop a little bit more, so it has more dimension to it. And you can really do this however you want. So I've got my white paint. I've got my brown paint to give me that kind of grungy color. And then I've got the blue color from my book. This is the color I painted the cover. And I'm going to use this to kind of tint the white color. Because even as I'm looking at that purple book, I'm thinking, I really should have tinted that white. Like, it looks a little too stark to me. So I'm going to use this to tint this white down a little bit. So I'm just going to add some in right away. And then I'm going to add a bunch of white. Put a bunch in. And this white should have a lot of tinting strength to it. And against this blue, that's a pretty dark blue that I have there. I can go pretty dark with this and it's still going to look very pale next to the book. And this, it doesn't matter as much if you get it homogeneous. It's okay if it's a little streaky, because again, we're making the look of wear and dirt, and that doesn't happen regular or consistently or whatever. I'm gonna add a little brown to this, dirty it up. I might even add a little orange to this to neutralize it a little bit, but this is kind of an orangey brown, so it might do the trick for me. Neutralize this blue. I'm going to add a little black. Now this will not need a lot. Just a drop. I don't want to turn it black. Just want to make it a little grayer. Again, to give it that kind of grungy look. Black paint is actually either, if it's kind of a traditional paint, it's actually either a very dark blue or a very dark green. And that's Mars black. So it's a very dark blue is actually how it's going to behave when it's mixed with stuff. So it's not going to interfere with our tone too much. If I was mixing it in with an orange, it would really dirty it up. But I'm mixing it up with a blue. And of course, it's a thin synthesized Mars black, but synthetic Mars black, but it's still going to be, because it's the student version. I think we are good. I don't have my splat mat down, do I? I am just mixing paint willy-nilly like a mad woman without any protection on. Always got to put your protection on. Although this isn't going to be as messy as the full painting was. And that might even still be a little too cheery of a color. So I know I have a lot of yellow in there because that green had a ton of yellow in it, if you remember correctly. So I'm going to try just a dot of red, because that red and that yellow make orange, and orange neutralizes blue. And this is still really Cinderella blue. Ooh, that's a lot. Red has a lot of tinting strength, so we'll have to be careful with that. Okay, this might be way too much red. It does not take much red to neutralize something. If it's too much, it'll start to go purple, although not likely because it's a really warm red. But it could go a little purple on me. So last time I said, you know, you want to start with a little water on your brush so that it will absorb the paint better. This time I do not want that. This time I want actually kind of the opposite. I want to work with a mostly dry brush. And I'm going to be doing basically a dry brush technique. So I'm going to keep a paper towel handy so I can blot off the excess paint. And I'm just going to pick up a little bit. It's way too much. So I'm going to blot off the extra and wipe off quite a bit of it. And then, I mean, this is my sample. If I mess this up, it's okay, because we're not going to see a whole lot of this. And I'm just going to kind of, that's not too bad. And I'm going to do it in two directions, because again, I'm kind of mimicking that look of the weave of the fabric. Again, this is a very smooth, plain woven fabric, so it doesn't have a lot of texture. So I'm just going to imply some fabric texture. And now I start off kind of light with how much I'll put on, and then I can always add more later if I decide I want more later. And I've got my Lavender and Old Lace book around for me to kind of look at for inspiration. I've got other old books I can look at for inspiration. And if I don't like those real strong lines, I'll just come in a little harsher with the brush and just kind of blur them out a little bit. And then this is where this is going to hinge. So I'm just going to make that a crisp line. And remember, anywhere there was an edge, that's where I saw the lightest areas. So I'm just going to kind of hit that with my brush. Again, it's kind of a dry brush technique. I'm just hitting it kind of sparingly. And then out from there. Same thing over on this side. I think I'm okay with that. I could hit these edges if I wanted to, but this is going to be in the background, and I kind of want it to fall into the background. So I don't want to give this too much detail. So I think I'm going to call that good and kind of set it aside. And so like I said, this uses way less paint and it's way less messy than yesterday's painting was. This will take a little bit more, and you can start wherever you want, but I'm going to start on the spine. So now I'm kind of warmed up, my brush is warmed up. So again, I'm just picking up a little color, blotting it off over here, and then kind of checking to see how much is left. So you probably can't even see what I'm doing. So this is the bottom, right? If this is the front, this is the bottom of the spine. And so that needs some color. And then I often do anything that kind of protrudes. And again, it kind of highlights them a little bit, so it really adds definition. And again, I may go back later and add more in. This is just the starting point. And I'm kind of coming in and shading into the corners a little bit. And like, you really can't mess this up. Like, if I do something I don't like, I have my original paint color, I can just paint over it. It's just paint. Right? You can do this. It's just paint. See how much more dimension that has? And this is a little textured just from the fabric wrinkling up a little bit, and that's okay. We saw how, you know, my other book was falling apart a little bit, and so it had some dings and bends in it. Highlight that stuff. So I'm going to come along the edge here and highlight this. This is the relaxing part for me. Normally I would have, like, again, some music or something going on in the background, and I would just be just vibing. Turn this around. It's easier when it's closer to me. And it's okay if some areas are lighter, some areas are a little darker. Books don't wear perfectly evenly. And turn it around so you can see it from different viewpoints. So you can decide if you like it. Do I have enough color? Do I need more? Do I need less? Painting is an additive and subtractive process. Add some in, take some out. And this is dry, so if I decided I didn't like that, right, I could go in with a wet rag and I could take it out. I could rub out parts that I didn't like as long as this lighter color is still wet. So don't be afraid of this. Have fun with it. And you could do a different color, right? It doesn't have to be a lighter color. Like, I'm mimicking a worn book. But you could do purples, right, to kind of throw some shadows in. You could do, you know, I'm just doing 2 colors. Maybe I'll mix up a 3rd color to show you what I mean. Like I could mix another color that kind of goes a little bit more towards an ultramarine blue, and use that for the recessed parts to kind of throw those into deeper shadow. You know, to really give this thing 3-dimension. I've actually never done that before. That's a good idea. But I could do red on black, right? Like if I was doing like a magic book or a Halloween themed book. Actually, I'm thinking about doing that, doing a black cover and then doing the highlights in either a red or a yellow or somewhere in between. And maybe the shadows are more of a purple. So that's essentially the look we're going for, though. And you can do as much or as little of this as you want. You can make this as pronounced or as soft as you like. This is pretty soft. You saw on that purple book, it was a little bit more pronounced. This may end up more pronounced. You know, I'll kind of bring this back over and be like, do they kind of match, right? Like right now I might have more texture on this than I do on this. So maybe I'll come back in and add a little more texture. I really like that idea of adding in shadow colors. I wonder if this is gonna, if I'm gonna mess it up. Let's find out. Let's mess it up. So I really like that idea. Oof. Just dork. All right, I'm gonna start on these deep shadows for this, because I think I'm gonna use this very sparingly. Oh, that's cool though. I mean, now I'm basically contouring, right? And now is about the time when I start to think about, you know, what do I want to do on the spine? Do I want to do some gilding, or I could do some, oops, I've got some silver rub and buff I could do on the spine here. I could do trim. I might do silver rub and buff. That might be cool with this very cool, you'll pardon the expression, with this very cool blue that I've got going on. Alright, well, once I'm pretty happy with the outside, then I tackle the inside. You must not neglect the inside. That will also be subject to wear and tear. And you can think about how books wear, and where do they wear. So hinges, edges, particularly the top and bottom. I really like that. I like it a lot. Does this need more? I don't know. Maybe I'm going to leave that alone for right now. I'll again cover these up with plastic so that they will last the night. So if I decide they want more tomorrow, well, actually Sunday, this is Friday, I have a wedding reception tomorrow, and then tomorrow night I have an online chat that I do. Shout out to everybody that's in the online chat. Of my patrons. That looks pretty good. Again, they still need to be rinsed, but they need to be washed up, but they still look pretty good. Okay, next thing is I have this ink. Because here's the thing. Like, we've done all the lightening and some darkening and stuff like that. But look. Oh, wrong book. Where'd you go? There you are. But look at how much just like brown grunge there is. Right? Brown grunge. So there's the lightning underneath, and then there's just a brown mucky grunge everywhere. And to me, it looks like effects you can get with ink. Let me see what I have. So I've got two different browns. I've got the Distress Oxide. Yes, I know. Tim Holtz, blah, blah, blah. But it's a great yellowish, tobacco-y, cancer-y brown color, if that makes any sense. Where this is just brown. This is kind of a one-dimensional color. But these Distress Oxides tend to have lots of undertones to them that I really like. And so this one's got kind of a yellowish, sickly kind of undertone that I really like. So, again, we are going to take our guinea pig and we are going to, let me get another paper towel. So I definitely need to blot some of this off. I have a bigger brush than this one too. Where is it? I bought these makeup brushes. I thought useless as makeup brushes, but fantastic for spreading around pigment. There we go. There's the bigger one. Let's try this one. Oh, yeah. That's a nice soft. Okay. Let's do this. Oh, look at that grunge. Can you see it? Can you see it? I hope you can see it. It's giving me just the perfect amount of gross grunge. Age, dirt, people's hands have been all up in this. I thought about doing this in paint, but I thought, man, the paint's gonna be way too opaque. I needed something transparent, and this ink is perfectly transparent for this. Can you see it? Can you see it? I'm gonna put some right on the gutter. Let's dirty that up too. Of course, some of the paint is still slightly tacky, so it's really grabbing the ink, which is great. And really kind of mixing with it a little bit. Oh, so grungy and gross. I love it. I'm like an old, often handled book. That's it. That's the look I want right there. Do you see it? Well, now you can't see it because I moved it. Let me move the whole thing, actually. Oh, I'm so excited, y'all. Look at how beautifully dirty and old and worn that looks now. And you could take some sandpaper to your book cover and wear the corners if you wanted to, wear down to the cardboard. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to mess with the structural integrity of the book. I just want to make it look worn. I don't want it to actually be worn. And, you know, kind of banged up. And I'm probably going to put book corners on it, which is why I'm not paying too much attention to the corners. I have some Rub and Buff somewhere. I just found it too. All right, and then I'm just going to not gild, but silver leaf in a way. And so it's kind of the same thing. I don't fill my sponge up, and I just kind of swipe it on so it looks kind of old and worn. And like it could stand to be redone. I guess I put a crap ton. You never need okay, this is the opposite of paint. Paint, mix more than you think. Rub and Buff, grab the smallest amount possible and then cut that in half. It's never as much as you think you're gonna need. All right, and then you just kind of buff this up to a shine. And let her dry. Should I do that frame too? I guess I'm doing it. See? So if there's areas you don't like, cover them up. Just paint over them. Fix it. You can do whatever you want. This is yours, baby. What do you think? Do you like the silver? I think I like it. I think I do. Alright, so I'm going to set these aside, let them fully dry, and set up. You know, I could splatter things on it. I might go back over to a little bit more ink because the silver looks a little too clean, right? So I could ink these edges up again. They could stand to be dirtied up again. So I think I'll do that. And then a layer of clear coat of some sort. And then the case is done. So, yeah. So I will see you in the next video, and we're going to decide where we're going from there. As always, I forget to say this, but, you know, like, subscribe, share, all that kind of good stuff. But here's a close-up of some of the grunge and stuff that we've done so far. So, yeah. So I'm just going to dirty that silver up a little bit. All right. Thanks. See ya.